All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the closing lecture of the School of Architecture lecture series. And start by reading our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the Oram and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and indigenous communities through educational offerings, partnerships, and community. So as mentioned, this is the final and closing lecture for the 2024-2025 lecture series. Additionally, this is my final lecture as the chair of the lecture series. And I just want to thank everyone once more for all of your support at every lecture. I also want to take this opportunity to thank AIA Southern Arizona for their support. And I want to thank Ryan, Nancy, Adam, Carmen, Danielle, Lucas, Elaine, and Janet. These are people behind the scenes that really help a lot with what we do. I want to thank past and present events committee, current committee composed of Teresa Rosano, Morgan Oster, Ashley Simone, Ella Parson, and Khadija Didan, with Teresa Rosano moving this forward for the next couple of years as your new chair. So I started the chair in 2022. We've had a few themes, 3 different years: haptics of place, contended landscapes, and this year's the architecture of design. And a recap of who we've had the privilege of inviting and joining us with us. And again, I feel we're very lucky to have been able to have these last few years. Eric Howler from Howler and Yoon, Lateral Office, Manuel Cervantes, Johanny Palasma, Susan Jones, Greg Faulkner, Andrew Cudlis, Rick Joy, Noemi Desplan Lichtart, Leopold Lambert, Brooke Mueller, Lindsay Wickstrom, Joshua Ramus, Eddie Jones, Will Bruder, Oficina de Resiliencia Urbana, Jacob Moore, Luis Ibarra, Ronald Rael, Professor Beth Weinstein, Max Underwood, Leslie Loco, Lorcan O'Herlihy, Daniel Toole, and closing us is Dust Architects. So I'm very blessed. It's been a sincere honor to do this with you, and I hope that we can continue the culture going strong. Looking forward, we're in conversations for next year. These are just some to name a few: Marlon Blackwell, David Umimoto, Holly Street Studio, Jack DeBartolo, Lauren Bond of Metabolic Studio, and others. So now I would like to hand things over to our former director of the School of Architecture and our dear friend, Rob Miller, who will introduce our speakers tonight. And thank you all once more.
Thank you, Oscar. It's nice to be here with everyone. Great to be back. A long time ago, when I was a freshman in architecture school, my favorite professor of architecture history, who happened to be a Harvard grad, who had traveled the world to see history firsthand, like your own Professor Shrink, but who, unlike your own Professor Shrink, was just as old as the hills. Well, Professor Hodges opened his course by giving us this definition of big A architecture. Architecture happens when you place one brick upon another carefully. At the time, of course, I just rolled my eyes at this. But now I find it's a succinct way of pointing at something that I think I know. But every time I go to define it, I find it's undefinable. Consider Professor Hodges' definition. Bricks, in his koan, of course, represent the material substance that embodies architecture. The placing of bricks is not so much about the process of construction as it points to the dual nature of design as something that's philosophically driven and points to an organizational system that lets us tie the ideas that are behind it to the building itself. And finally, there's that all-important modifier, the admonition to do all that stuff carefully. It suggests that architecture is not rote or automatic or standard, but must, in a profound way, be considered. Tonight's speakers wholly subscribe to Professor Hodges' dictum, although they may not know it. They are so careful to screen for chances to make big A architecture that I think they've probably turned away more clients than they've accepted. They're so concerned about how one brick is placed on top of another that, for the most part, they've built the vast majority of their projects all by themselves. And they're so wary about not putting out anything into the world but what is considered a big A architecture that they've done probably a small portion of projects that would have been done by a less agonizing, less scrupulous, merely very good architect. But as the sun rises and simmers and sets in the desert, so dust must follow its calling. Dust principles, Cade Hayes and Jesus Robles, both earned MArch degrees at Texas Tech, an institution that continues to celebrate and promote their practice. Before founding DUST, both principals also worked for architects in different parts of the country, and both worked for an architect who's probably their philosophical, if not their spiritual muse, Rick Joy. The DUST team, Natalia, Jarek, Jacob, and Tanya, are recognized by the principals as contributing importantly to the work. In fact, one of the traits that distinguish Cade and Jesus from many great architects is their deep humility, which to my mind makes their professed search for living on the land and in tune with time entirely credible. According to their own koan, we listen first, and then we respond. Please join me in welcoming to the college, not tonight as teachers or critics, but as clergymen of Big A architecture, the group of thoughtful architects that we know as DUST.
Wow. Thank you, Rob. As a generous intro, I hope we fulfill that small a to big A. I want to thank Oscar and the events committee. Maybe we can give them a round of applause for nice work in putting all this together. And we're honored to be here tonight to close out the lecture with a lot of familiar faces, some family, some clients, old and new, and colleagues. So in a way, it's a homecoming, but also not. So it's our pleasure. Thank you, guys. This evening, we're going to share a little bit about where we're from, what inspires us, and some of the works in progress. And we'll end with 4 projects that take a deeper dive into site, material, and ritual. And so we're going to try to not lull you to sleep. The origins of our practices start in the high plains of the Llano Estacado in West Texas. Around 1997, Kate and I both enrolled at Texas Tech University, and this image here is about circa 2000 in Lubbock. It's a view from the architecture building. Gives you insight into the origins of our name. About this time of year, in April, spring winds pick up and lift this cloud of dust that lasts about 4 days or longer. So those things are sort of defining where we come and where we come from and how we think about this. I'm also honored to be pursuing the work that we're doing with my best friend for over 27 years. And so it's been not so much work, but a part and a way of life to think about what we do and how we engage this environment. This is landing a snapshot of the region which we call home. The red, orangish dots are projects that have been completed, not many. Yellow are projects that are on the boards, and white we call lost dogs, projects that came in and are somewhere out there. Maybe they'll come back. Cade hails from Carlsbad, New Mexico, born and raised. His grandfather was a farmer who lived in an old adobe with 2-foot thick walls. And I know for him, this place is a special source of inspiration, the Chihuahuan Desert. He is our quintessential New Mexican. I was born on an Army base just south of here. My father, who's in the audience, was born in El Paso, Texas, and my mother immigrated from her home in Seoul, Korea. This landscape is just one chapter where my story would begin. There's a common thread that Cade and I have in the migrations of that region that we call home. There's a great big sky and a vastness, this huge open expanse. It makes you feel small when you start measuring up to the scale of the things and places we talk about. In the early 2000s, as Rob mentioned, Cade got an opportunity to work at Studio Rick Joy, and I followed subsequently after. Our experiences there did inform our practice and also the work we did with Paul Weiner, Franz Buehler, Sebastian Mariscal. This was a sort of pivotal time in the 2000s where we're starting to inform ideas about how we want to practice and engage the natural and built environment. 2007 was when that started, and many of you can remember that that was probably the best time to start an architectural practice. So as architects and artists and builders and stewards, we find inspiration in this landscape. The poetry of this place, sort of our navigating star. And not only in its visual beauty, but in its resilience of life, the cultures that have preceded us, and as Rob was saying, we observe, but we also listen. We listen to the silence, to the wind, and to the stories of this place. It's hard to go from Arizona to Texas without bumping into some piece of cultural artifact that was here before us. We find these stories written in the stone, like these cave dwellings and bandolier carved out of the tough ash layer, providing shelter, the elemental response to this environment. Juhani Pallasmaa talks about cultural artifacts and ruins having the power to awaken our imagination. And for us, these cultural sites inspire our daydreams. There's a beauty that we find that exists in the wear of the foot, the steps and the handholds. We say we're naturally curious, and a big part of our process is to have physical experiences and discovery in these places that we visit. These sites inform us and they offer us clues and common sense strategies of how to respond to the environment, how they site their architecture, how they respond to the sun, the moon, the stars, the sandstone, the clay, the rocks, granite, limestone, lava. All of that from North Central to South America is a material culture that is masonry and of the earth. And for us, for me, that represents an authentic American aesthetic. 2 days after Thanksgiving in 2020, my daughters and I dropped into this canyon in Utah. It's 30 degrees at the rim, about 20-something at the bottom. And as we were moving, we spotted this granary about 30 feet above the canyon floor. As we made our way to the top, the wisdom of that place started informing us. We started sweating and removing our outer layers, the heat from the sun radiating off the walls and rising. For us, it's a material culture that is of the land and is responsive to its climate. And we're continually in awe of the evidence and artifacts that withstand the test of time. The evidence of their hand and their work, the artifacts and residue, remain as stoic reminders of life in these arroyos and these canyons. So tonight we'll be sharing a few stories with you, projects that look to engage the natural and built environments, in a responsive and sensitive way. These endeavors strive to tell the story of time, place, and the human hand, culture and the human hand. So early on in our practice, it was Kate and I for a lot of our projects with a revolving team of designers and craftspeople. Currently, we've grown to a collaborative of 6, including Kate and I. And we all share a deep passion of the place, culture, story, and deep interest and curiosity to create thoughtful and meaningful spaces. Spaces that engage our senses and explores the essence of what it means to be a human being. We have a fascination with the old as a current project that we're slowly disassembling and storing the wood to figure out what we might do with it, and looking to remove all of that infill brick and save it. It was one of the old Chinese markets in Menlo Park, built in the 1950s, and the new owner is looking to develop it into a cafe and a mercantile. We're always looking at the intersection of old and new, currently working on this ADU project with a 100-year-old brick garage that's getting transformed into an ADU, expanding its living space with ICF block. We also just recently completed an addition and restoration of about a 115-year-old adobe in Barrio Histórico. Taking some of that brick that we were demolishing, crushing it up, remortaring and stabilizing what was there, and layering over a coat of mud before the final plaster gets on. So you can see some of the grittiness of how to stabilize some of these old structures as we're trying to make them more modern and suitable to sort of modern spatial qualities. That's Agustin Valdez. He's our mason, all around, I'd say all around badass. He's been with us since the beginning on all of, his hand has been on all the projects. That wall he was leaning on is this wall here, and only in the construction process do we realize the beauty of leaving some of that organic quality of the adobe mixed with the new CMU up top. Conversations of hiding it or exposing it really quickly became let it express itself. We're looking to wrap up this year ADU infill in Barrio El Hoyo. It's to the historic Elysian Grove property. Essentially, the ADU is creating the 3rd unit, and our goal here was to blend into the existing neighborhood streetscape. And as you move through it, you come into this entry courtyard, and it's divided up into roughly about 6 courtyards if you count the car. And so you have this living space for the east unit, a garden court that's capturing rainwater, a pool court shared by all but is really connected here to the west, and then a private courtyard that's tied to the ADU. The project, as I said, was looking to blend into the street. You move to that open sky space, and it's a simple 900 square feet, no doors, interior doors on the project. Our first public project we completed in 2017. For us, had larger ideas about habitat restoration, wildlife migration, water resiliency, and conservation. This was a collaboration with Siri Trumbull and Annie Powell in design, and also in construction. Sheehan Wachter, Daniel Badillo, John Paul George, and Ben Gallegos. The image on the left is the northernmost migration point. That's the site there in each image. Northernmost migration point for the hummingbird, the Sky Islands of biodiversity, the jaguars sort of reign. And as we zoom in, the red is unprotected habitat, and the green is the Nature Conservancy's holding. And so we're right at the intersection of that. And when we inherited the site, the image on the left, everyone was looking at this house. But really, everything was there, the birds and the wildlife and all of that was there because of the habitat that's already existing. So for us, the simple move was to clear that space and get everyone's direction focused to what was naturally already existing, what we call the theater. And that was done by a simple move of just lowering the grade 2 feet at a 1:20 slope. It was at that point that we told our client that the project was done. We felt our job was complete, and our focus and the energy was to that forest to the south. The roof is a simple structure. It's a shade structure. It diverts water to catch basins, which brings pollinator plants closer to your viewing and to your enjoyment. Cutting that grade slowed down the water for us to capture it and try to connect to the existing floodplain that was there. Images of it complete, and recent images of the oak aging over time. That first public project for us led to continue working with that client into imagining how they can think about inhabiting a very difficult site in a regulated floodway, expanding square footage. So we're helping them to visualize how that might happen. You can kind of see where the pavilion is there. And that project also led us to submitting for this year's Venice Biennale, in which is run by Faye Jones School of Architecture, Louisiana Museum, and they've curated a concept called Porch, an Architecture of Generosity. We submitted the pavilion to speak about intersection of habitats, biodiversity, the border, and our region. And so for us, it was important to tell a story of the place more than the architecture. So we developed this topography model with the help of Rawan and Sheehan. Jarek Sosi was the lead on this, and Jacob was also support in these things. And El Norte is what we're establishing as a topography. It's got part of Mexico. We removed any of the linkages of a human construct. There's no border line. There's no river. It's just a topography. And then we took the model and we burned it to represent the scarred landscape, the current battle of public lands, the current extraction and appetite for minerals in this region. So we felt compelled to say something about this place, this intersection of habitats. From the land, we weave together these offerings. The bottom offerings are looking at the earth, the sky, and where we dwell in between. Because it was going to Venice, we also got inspiration from Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities. And to fully tell this story, we wanted to tell it in a way that projected this sort of dream. A commentary on our situation now regarding public lands, our culture, and our appetite for current extraction of these materials in our region. So the bottom is the earth, a datura seed, coyote bone, sumac berries, juniper, and red, white, and blue corn. In the sky, you have turquoise as the sun, mica as the moon, and a meteorite that Kate and I found on a site as the cosmos. The cicada is a transition and emergence between both levels, and we're stating that the architecture is its husk, the remnants of it in which the first porch in our region could be the Wato, Tohono O'odham shade structure of mesquite white posts and saguaro ribs. And our interpretation of that, the wildlife pavilion. Some detailed shots. I'll hand it over to Cade.
Thanks, Jesus. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. So I'm going to just move through a brief reflection of some work we've done. We usually don't show renderings to anyone but our clients. And it's really about a reflection of where we've been. As Jesus mentioned, some of these are lost dogs. Some of these are in process, but I'd say everything we started as Dust, we started by designing intimate, thoughtful homes. And this has allowed us to deeply explore ideas of material, place, and the poetics of architecture. We've always believed that architecture begins with listening to place, climate, culture, of course, our clients, and our own intuitions. By paying close attention to what the land says, the way the light and air moves, and how materials weather. This is our approach, quiet, rigorous, rooted, and has become the core of our practice. And it's through this quiet persistence and dedication to craft that we've begun to see doors open beyond our own home territory of Arizona. In the high deserts of Taos, or the limestone hills north of Fredericksburg, Texas. We've had opportunities to design homes in lava flows near St. George, Utah, and urban compounds in small villages like Marfa, Texas. We design places on the edges of Joshua Tree. And I'd say no matter what the climate or context, our process investigations don't really change. It's about our values and not the location that define the work. And as our geography has expanded, so has our ambition. And so we've been trying to pursue and break into new typologies. We've had opportunities to design small hospitality projects in other remote desert locations like Terlingwood, Texas, or windy, humid locations like the north coast of Aruba. We've even been invited to do competitions in otherworldly landscapes, this volcanic landscape in Saudi Arabia. And right now, the idea of creating public work for us allows for a different reverie of more people stepping in to the kinds of spaces we've been quietly trying to craft for years, which are humanistic spaces with emotional resonance. So for all you students on your journey, I'd say find your process and root your designs and values. And if the approach is honest, the work will resonate with fundamental human conditions, and hopefully it will find a receptive audience. The following selection of work, again, Jesus mentioned, is sort of where the carefully crafted and deliberate principled projects that hold memories and stories and have begun to speak for us and open these doors of opportunities that we now have. One of our first projects was for a couple, though in truth, it was really for the husband. He had grown up in Tucson and longed to reconnect with the landscape he once roamed. David, his name, discovered this really beautiful 6.3 acre property on the west side of Tucson. It's the quintessential Sonoran desert terrain, and it's defined by protected rock outcroppings and a vital arroyo, an animal thoroughfare that carves its way along the base of this northern rock outcropping. To the south, the land meets the edge of the Saguaro National Park, so there'll never be a neighbor in this direction. And both of these protected rock outcroppings quietly define the site's boundaries. We like to think of them as geologic anchors shaping the project's essence. So we took the client's prompt to reconnect with this place deeply to heart, and we leaned in. And we let the geologic formations themselves suggest the edges of habitation. The living space was not imposed, it was discovered. And as many of you know, the desert is an aesthetic reverie, and this site is no exception. It's rugged, it's raw, lush, fragile. It's a living tapestry of flora and fauna and invites awe and demands attention. We designed and built this project through the processes guided by patience, empathy, and respect. In this landscape, what is destroyed may never recover. And to root the owners, David and Karen, to this place, we begin with material, because we find that material has the ability to connect us immediately and viscerally to a place. The earth for the walls was sourced less than 20 miles away, and this image shows the low-tech mixing process for the rammed earth. Rammed earth is a semi-wet blend of engineered sand, water, pigment, cement. It's delivered in 12-inch lifts and then rammed in layers with pneumatic layers. And layer by layer, as these walls grow upwards, it's an act of patience and strength. The resulting compression of this project reached about 1,800 to 2,000 psi. The finished walls are very thick and deeply striated. Most of the walls in this project are 18 inches thick. On the west, the wall is 2 foot thick, and then there's a 3 foot thick wall in the middle. The process tells a story of their making, of the place and time. And as the land holds a spirit, so do the materials. And we feel that this house does not merely sit upon it, on the land, it emerges from it. And we've always sought to create our designs as if they belong to this place, and if they were always there and couldn't exist nowhere else. So the arrival begins to get to this house down a meandering dirt road, and it compresses into a garage about 400 feet away from the house. From there, the path narrows again. It's an invitation to slow down to the owners. The walk through the desert becomes a ritual. The raw earth underfoot, subtle ceremony of sound and sense. The flora and fauna, again, invite attention and offer well-being. Gary Paul Nabhan, some of you might know his name. We were listening to a podcast, and he was in conversation with the ethnobiologist named Mark Plotkin. And he described the desert sense, olfactory scent, as an osmo-cosmic symphony. And they've now discovered 25 to 40 desert plants that release biologically active oils, pinene, limonene, sebinene, to name a few. Each of these lower stress, blood sugar, cortisol levels, and lower our heart rate. It's kind of the same idea that the Japanese and Koreans promote with forest bathing. And in this case, we call it desert bathing. But this is not a metaphor, it's medicine. So people ask us often why we would do this to someone when they got to carry groceries. But that's why. When getting closer into the plan, a single rammed earth wall snakes its way through the landscape and defines 3 distinct living zones: sleeping area on the east, the main living core in the middle, and a music recording space on the west side. The division reinforces both an experience of the desert and the necessary sound isolation the clients demanded. There's no interior circulations, and the elements dictate the movement. We designed this house based on a lot of passive solar design strategies, which include south-facing orientation for passive heating and cooling, east and west elongation to reduce heat gain, southern patios to capture prevailing breezes for cross ventilation, with the exception of the music recording space because of rare special instruments. Shared walls and strategic placements of programmatic elements buffer temperature extremes, and high thermal mass construction for gradual thermal exchange. We are always inspired by the experiences we seek for pleasure within this landscape, from jumping and climbing on rocks or simply observing how the geologic formations of rock outcroppings on the property offer pockets for seeds, water, collection, and animal habitat. And the entrance to this home was inspired by this phenomenon. At this threshold, the architecture and the land merge. The body slows and the mind opens. As one brushes past creosote, its fragrance rises even in the dry seasons, triggers memory, and grounds our presence. Deep shadows linger beyond the entry steps to be mysterious and inviting. As you ascend, you arrive at a 3,000-pound custom pivot door. The door's aural thunk as it unlocks and locks into place becomes part of a ritual. How many doors do we pass through in a day, and how many doors do we remember? Inside, a refined austerity prevails. Materials are reduced to the elemental, and details are restrained. The spaces are meant not to be noticed, but to be felt. Time leaves its mark in material and light. Diurnal shifts animate the surface. Light dances. From indigo pre-dawn to amber dusk, color moves across the walls and the landscape beyond in a silent performance. Radiant coolness of the rock and narrow slot canyons speed air and cool our bodies. And the entrance to the bedrooms of this project employs a similar tactic as an attempt to recreate natural experiences we have encountered, like this one in Devil's Hall in the Guadalupe Mountains in Texas. We find that true luxury these days is not necessarily in opulence, but in silence and connection to the land, to light, and to ourselves. On hot days with the doors open and no air conditioning, the house behaves like a ramada, enjoying a 20-degree temperature drop passively. Bathroom walls are clad in charred Spanish cedar, and the scent greets you in the bedroom, engaging memory and sense. The Shu Sugiban finish deepens at night into a velvet infinity. A white bronze handle bears the imprint of use, polished by ritual and touch. Here, the landscape possesses the house. At dawn, soft light filters through vegetation, gently waking the sleeper. Bathing becomes communion with the breezes. Sunset and fire become daily rituals. The desert light again performs its slow spectrum, deep blue to lilac, pale gold to magenta, and rose to flame. The desert is the theater, the house is the vessel, the frame for the quiet drama of flora, fauna, wind, shadow, starlight. Elemental presences, air, earth, stone, light, wind, silence, and the cosmos gather here. Together they create not just a home, but a bond where the clients are not merely housed, they are held.
Our second commission for us is deeply characterized by the cultural and geological histories of this region. It's located in the San Rafael Valley in southern Arizona. The owner's grandfather owned one of the largest cattle ranches at the turn of the century. And his property was one of the last homesteading ranges after it all got sold off. And so this place was deeply emotional and nostalgic for him. And it informed quite a bit of our understanding of the site and our client. A little bit about our client. He's a vintner. So there's grapes in the ground on the site, probably about 10 years before the house came up. He's also a falconer. So he captures wild falcons on his property and he trains them to hunt for rabbits and food, for game for him to consume. We probably had a handful, half a dozen of in-person interactions with this guy. So we dubbed him the most interesting man in the world, the Dos Equis guy. And to get into that mindset, this project that's 945 square feet, remote, off-grid, took 2 years to complete. Not because we take that long, we are slow, but because this was a careful consideration by him sort of leading the way on what this space would be and the unfolding of that. So conversations would take months to get an answer. So we had to adjust and adapt. It's about 2 hours from Tucson. It's 80 miles, but it takes 2 hours to get there. And it's located about 10 miles north of the border as the crow flies. And I think that's the current state of our border. To get into the mindset of the Dos Equis guy, we decided to construct large parts of this ourselves and to live on site for a duration. And so due to the remoteness of the project, this reduced some of the cost, it gave us focus, but over time we learned it gave us an intimacy to the site, the client, and to the seasons. We experienced some of our own vulnerabilities and fears having to make our own shelter and space and live on this site 10 miles north of the border. You know, an irky evening feeling sitting at the campfire under these stars, and you look up and there's the Border Patrol drone circling us. Maybe comforting, maybe not. The nights would be so cold, we would go to bed thinking about fire. And the morning so cold, waking up thinking about fire. The first and most elemental thing that we were experiencing. Then we thought about protein. And this was our typical breakfast for the crew on site. There's only 3 of us consuming all of that. We thought we could get up early, 7 o'clock, get a full 10-hour day on site. It took us till about 9 to warm up, nourish ourselves, and move 200 yards to the house site. We're deeply observant of our region. We take clues. And the picture on the top is a cinder cone in northern Arizona, SP crater. And the image on the bottom is using pulverized lava and cement and water to make these walls. Typically, the lava sand is a discarded material. It's used for landscape or gas trench fill. It's an industrial use. In New Mexico, they use it to salt the icy roads. So if you're driving through New Mexico and you see this red tint, it's because they spread out this scoria across the ground to de-ice the roads. So we were looking to leverage this earthen material to make the walls of Casa Caldera. There would be no scoria or that technology without the genius of Paul Schwamm, who developed this material over 30 years and designed and constructed this machine to mix and distribute the material into the formwork. So you have 2 hoppers here, the lava sand, cement that shakes, comes down, hits an auger that mixes it with a, I think, swamp cooler spray hose that just barely wets the material. And as it moves up there, it has a consistency of cottage cheese. Because of the cement, we gain significant structural advantages. Aside from rammed earth, we don't have to worry about lintels, steel, or concrete in there. We're able to fashion rebar and develop some of the structural strength. It's permitted as lightweight concrete, unreinforced, but we're using the reinforcement in specific locations to gain beams. Because of that cement, we can create a veneer layer and isolate the exterior, put in the foam layer in between, and try to control our thermal flywheel. The image on the right is a rock from the site, which is a large volcanic region, and the finished product on the windowsill. The road to Casa Caldera is a long one. As I mentioned, it's 80 miles, it takes you 2 hours, and there's a slowness of that. Your experience of this project begins leaving wherever you're at. For the owner, he flies into Tucson, has a car stored, and he drives 2 more hours to get to his property. Part of that, there were definite benefits of us designing and building and traveling for those 2 hours to the site. But part of that experience, there's a slow decompression happening. As you leave the city, the road degrades slower and slower. You move from the highway to a state highway, to a county road, to a forest road, and then finally to a 2-track that we developed by just driving our trucks in the same spot. As you shift through these sort of biomes, this is looking south into Mexico. The international border, pardon my shaky hand, is right about there. You cross over the headwaters of the Santa Cruz River, the lifeblood of Tucson, and you move through the grasslands of San Rafael Valley, slowly moving into these emery oak orchards in the Canelo Hills. So the siting of this house is tucked into a grove of emery oaks. Most all of the trees on this property are oaks. And when we first walked the landscape, Kate and I were trying to land it in this clearing. It's easy, it's flatter. You have 270-degree view. Our owner wanted to put the house where we marked it with this pad here. Down low on the bench, no view, looking at the floodplain. He was concerned about migrant traffic and hunters being able to view from the house. So through that conversation, we learned he doesn't want to be seen, nor maybe does he care about the view. So maybe 2 months, I don't know if that's an exaggeration. This was a negotiation between prospect and refuge and where to land the house. And when we first walked the site, we identified that grove of trees as something sacred. Kate and I did not want to touch that grove of trees. Thought maybe we'd put a campfire out there, it's a destination. He said, why don't we put the house right in that grove of trees? And it really tested us. And when I look back at it, he's teaching us in a Yoda sort of way. Ultimately, we caved, we sawed the trees down, we used that wood for fuel to heat the house. One of the original concepts was for the grass and the landscape to be able to move through the house. It's a hardworking 745 square feet, 945 if you include the central space, which is the Zagwan. The structure wanted to disappear more than be seen, and the Zagwan, because there's no AC in this desert refuge, had to do everything for us. Bring in the sun, keep out the sun, bring in the ventilation, and use the diurnal shifts of being up on the hillside to cool the space. It's essentially the lung of the project. There's 25 operable doors and windows in this 945 square foot project. So we talk about it, it's much like sailing a ship. The energy use is not through air conditioning, but your calories, opening windows, closing doors. Its hidden qualities, this is about 75 yards as you arrive, park your car, and move towards the house. The ritual of this sort of being that landscape that you move through and it being framed as you're coming upon the Zagwan. Like Tucson Mountain Retreat, there's an audible click to this door. As you open it, you'll find holes in the ground that can mark places where you can put the doors to direct the wind, keep out the sun, multi-use and function out of these doors, depending on the temperature and how you need to use it. As I mentioned, when we were camping, the ritual of fire probably was the underlying story of this one for it. All the way through when we were complete and staying out there, in the winter, it would take about a day. About a day of stoking the fire, and that fire would charge the mass in the walls. And after that, that tiny space is too hot. And now you have to open the doors and windows in 30-degree weather. However, the scoria absorbs it, holds it, and radiates it. So the efficiency of that energy and how you use it, you still wake up thinking about fire. And you still go to sleep thinking about fire. And to this day, as you go, the smoke and the smell of that emery oak is permeating the walls. Another ritual we thought about because it was so cold and because we needed that protein was waking up in the winter to the sun in the kitchen and making coffee, starting the fire and making coffee with a view. Our projects, all of them, I would say, are striving for a deep resonance and connection to time. Through the seasons, marking the passage of the sun, all the way down to the aging of the materials and the subtle shifts of light through the seasons. I think for Kate and I, this project being our second commission, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's a simple and effective response. I don't know many clients that would live in the desert without air conditioning. And through that, it sort of held our feet to the fire on how this thing had to perform and this client's connection to that place and to the land. So for us, we learned it takes bold clients to bring these sort of ideas and be willing to live. We didn't force that upon him. Be willing to live in this way and in this manner. So we hope to have a client like that someday. However, I don't think we will build and live on site for the next one. Maybe not.
This next one is in the trans-Pecos town of Marfa, Texas. It's the land of Donald Judd, unexplained lights, and some of the darkest skies in the region. Our clients, Terry and Lindy, asked us to design a small private suite on the property they owned. It was an idea for a space to host family, find some quiet, and tread lightly on the Chihuahuan desert gardens that they have developed and love. And we often joke that this was our first urban project. The project's over here on this side of town, if you guys know Marfa. It's right overlooking South Sea Puertas, which means get out while you can, for those who don't know. Marfa's population is 2,100. There's no stoplights, just big skies, deep art, vast horizons, and plenty of silence. Many of our early design conversations revolved around the local vernacular, the sun-faded relics of adobe construction and the evolving traditions of this place and this part of far west Texas. Many of these images are ruins, but they still carry the soul of the place. They had this existing home. It was designed by Ronald Royale, who gave a lecture earlier this semester, and his partner, Virginia Sanfratello. It's a striking tall volume, adobe structure with open space for entertaining and art. But with only one bedroom and only one bathroom, it couldn't accommodate the rhythm of visiting kids and their grandkids. Their sight gently falls to the east, revealing long views towards the distant mountain formation the locals call Haystack. This view towards the east is central to the daily rituals of the owners. Yoga at sunrise, morning coffee, outdoor dining, fires on the terrace. They mentioned so many times how they enjoyed watching the shadow of the earth fall over the vast expanse and envelop the haystack as the cosmos slowly emerge. So rather than trying to add on or expanding the original house, we proposed a separate suite. Again, the idea of getting them outside as much as possible in an effort to preserve the gardens and honor the view and create it's the project's own dialogue with the landscape. And the new suite quietly matches the height of the original structure and opens the gardens to three sides. Second eastern terrace offers them a private perch towards Haystack, maintaining their intimate rituals with the horizon. The clients struggled with upkeep of their traditional adobe home. When I say traditional, I mean the bricks. They were having trouble because of the extreme weather conditions without a big porch overhang. Due to rain and snow, freeze and thaw, when they engaged us, they had already applied 2 full rounds of pure mud plaster, and they were on a third layer of plaster. This time they had tried lime plaster in the first few years of ownership. Each time, the result was more patchwork than the last. They were finding that knowledgeable labor in natural and lime plasters were hard to come by out in the Marfa frontier. The beauty was becoming lost and the burden was becoming real. So again, they love the idea of adobe, but they wanted something more resilient. And so we suggested the idea of compressed earth blocks. It's stabilized with a small amount of cement, visually similar to adobe, less fragile. It doesn't need plaster and able to weather the harsh elements. The walls were laid by a small crew of 5 masons, one on a saw, this wild saw right here. He'd be covered in dust at the end of the day, every day. And then there were 2 teams of 2 laying bricks in a humble handmade rhythm. You could feel the love and care in every course. I think the use of earth-based materials evokes the ghost of the past traditions. And in a time when earth and construction is rare, we see it as quiet resistance, a reverence for the land beneath our feet. The architecture also walks a line between rough-hewn and refined, pairing rustic materiality with clean precision. It's a conversation between the past and present, essence and elegance. Every opening is carefully considered for light, airflow, and engagement with the outdoors. The architecture acts as a framing device for place and ritual. It also speaks to the vanishing trade of adobe and earth and construction. These masons, as you notice, they're not spring chickens. They had been masons most of their lives, and they only knew concrete masonry units. They were really excited. They really loved working on this project because of the earth and brick. And they told Eric, that's the GC, that they hope to do another one. I think it's indicative of our time when this landscape used to be only made with local materials, that now that these guys, all from Mexico, have never even used the product, the material. And so I think there's something universal and grounding about earth and materials that spoke to them. The suite's plan is designed to engage and in some cases dissolve into these desert gardens, preserving the Chihuahuan desert ecosystems that the owners had planted. They had been developing this garden right here long before we arrived. This is their eastern terrace. We designed a Ocotillo shade structure and helped them redevelop the gardens around the new structure. This became a vegetable garden so they could combat the rabbits. Outdoor shower. But the house is looking to engage that in every sense of the word. The project is simple, 36 feet by 36 feet, 16 feet tall. A square monolith to match the existing homes' proportions with an emphasis on exterior restraint and interior richness. We were trying to go for a refined austerity again, to stay out of the view, kind of be a whisper from the outside. Inside, we'd like it to open up to intimacy and immersion with the land. The light, material, space, and airflow animate the rooms. The eastern terrace becomes the private zone to continue the rituals of breath and view. And on return visits, we found that the desk area was always being used. It was a beloved space out looking on this garden that they had been developing. And I think it's evidence of how architecture can support and enhance our daily lives. Terry, one of the owners, described the feeling of being inside as somewhere suspended between old world and modern, and it really felt like he summed it up really well. One of the moves in the bedroom is to take advantage of the dark skies, and so the primary view is up. We placed a large 4-foot square operable skylight that opens to the stars and moonlight at night, so the bedroom becomes an earthen observatory. The suite uses passive strategies for heating and cooling. At the time we designed it, they didn't want air conditioning. COVID hit, they were living out there and got a little scared about the temperatures and decided to put air conditioning mid-process, but we thought about that in the same way we thought about all the other projects. The small south-facing patio connects to the Sotal garden and vegetable gardens. And at first glance, it may seem like this is just a stack of bricks, but for us and the owners, it was a meditation on material, light, memory, and future. The gardens, the air, the sky, the smells and soil make this part of their compound truly engaging.
Our last project we're going to share with you, we just recently completed. The bulk of the construction was done in 2023, with about a year for landscaping and developing some of the furniture and furnishings inside. We started that design process in 2017, in late 2017. And so what's my math? 6 years to design and construct a project that is relatively small and humble. So you see a pattern here in our work. It's small, it's slow. I don't know if it's methodical, but that thing of listening and responding is continually engaging, not just in the design process, but also through its construction, whether we're building it or like this project, we have a contractor building this. So it's a 17-acre site located in the Galisteo Basin Preserve. A large portion of that site is a conservation easement for the wildlife. So we have a small building envelope, not many places to go. With this idea that time is our partner, we found that the design over time got stronger. Ideas shifted, materials shifted, concepts moved throughout that whole process. There's one idea that we have the great vision and we must execute it to that, and there's the other idea that we're playing jazz and we respond and we flow. And this was the latter. When we first got on site, we camped there with the client. So Kate and I arrived, we'd never met them, and we're now intimate, sleeping on the landscape. We spent about 3 days out there going around and talking about all their ideas, and We're about late September, so it's still warm. Santa Fe's higher elevation, but it's still hot to them. It's kissing 90. What we found was you had 360 degrees of view on top of this mesa, which made it challenging. And the longer we're spending out there, Kate and I are also talking about, it's evoking these memories of us playing in the mountains. Where are they at? The Jemez Mountains, where Bandelier is, and the Jemez Hot Springs. The view to the north to the Sangre de Cristos, down valley to Santa Fe. The view to the south, southwest to the Sandia Mountains and Albuquerque in the Rio Grande Valley on the other side. And then our mind keeps going to the east, over the grade to the Llano Estacado to Lubbock, Texas. Beyond the Jemez, all the way to Arizona and the Grand Canyon and the Colorado Plateau. So very quickly, we felt like this place became personal. The owners were really set on this view to the south. Being on the land, as they're all talking and looking south, we're looking north. For whatever reason, this intimacy of that downgrade, the soft gaze, the light to your back, and the mountains reflecting that glow had so much charm, and we could see its potential. But we had to convince our client that the north was valued. They came to us, said, I don't want to see any city lights. And the whole time we're spending on site, it wasn't about the lights to me. There was a charm to that, but it was about this soft gaze to the north. In a place where you have 360 views, we can't look at it all. We have to shelter ourselves from the wind that's coming from many directions and from the sun that is still sweltering. So the first move for us was to lay this straight line to the north and poke holes in it to gain that view back that we were going. We're kind of sneaking this in. The owners still weren't interested in it. A lot of that is pushing our energy down here where we can take some of these diurnal shifts in wind. But there's good wind and there's bad wind. And most of it, I think, is inhospitable. So you have to find ways to think about how to bring that indoor-outdoor experience, but bring ventilation. It's also another structure that doesn't have AC. So we thought about it in all of the cardinal directions, trying to land on this mesa. The primary view, as mentioned, sort of drawing that energy up and through. That stroke on that land starting to manifest itself. We use scoria, similar to Casa Caldera. In this case, we use the black. The pursuit of the black scoria took Paul, we also had Paul Schwamm on this, took Paul about a year to find this. So part of that 7 years is, trying to find material. We thought it would be easy, and you can find the red, it's 7 miles away. They use it to salt the roads. But to find the black, New Mexico feels like that's a valuable product. So everywhere we went was a marked up price, and we're trying to figure out why this price was so marked up. It's because their primary client is the state of New Mexico to de-ice the roads or to block manufacturers wanting to use it. So we stretch from West Texas to Raton to Southern Colorado to Arizona, and we're like, man, you've got to be able to find something in Santa Fe in this volcanic laden landscape. Someone's mining scoria. And we found, those people you might see on like Breaking Bad, like, yeah, I got black lava, I'll get it to you, just give me $8,000. And then he's gone. So we ended up going to one of Paul's resources, and it took a long time to figure out, we're just gonna get it from Arizona. It's a cleaner product. Paul knew it. It was to his sort of specifications, and the cost ended up being to ship it from Arizona cheaper than any regional mine that we can get it from. Better quality, honest pricing. We brought it from Sholo, Arizona, by the truckload. We had a contractor on this one, Chris Cook of Harmony Design. We started this construction right in COVID. So the price we got was a pre-COVID price. As we started going into this, costs started going up and people just started disappearing off the map. Concrete guy in a bid, supposed to start next week, nowhere to be found. Laborers and employees that are supposed to be on the site, nowhere to be found. So we're sort of moving through this. Already we're like 4 years in, so we're not in a hurry. Chris, a carpenter by trade who became general contractor, decided to take the concrete on himself. And you can sort of, there was a lot of trepidation on, man, that's an important move. Are we sure? And this is the result of it. Well, I think it's better than maybe what some of the other concrete contractors might have delivered. In Santa Fe, Casa Caldera was using 18 inches. We're using 2-foot thick walls here, and we're pushing that thermal barrier towards the front to the exterior, providing about a 6 to 8 inch veneer. Many of our crew, because of this labor shortage and COVID, Jarek and Jacob and Augustine joined Paul Schwam for periods of time through the season. It took about 20 weeks to finish these walls. You can see in that image here, the insulation banked towards the outside, creating essentially a veneer that's absorbing water, sheeting it down. The foam is a vapor barrier, and leaving the thicker and the mass to sort of charge as we heat up the space through the winter. Some images of the formwork developed by Paul and his machine. Whenever I see this machine, I get a sound in my head that sounds like a tortilla machine. You're living with this for months. There's a charm to it. But then when the end of the day and it goes silent, there's also this breath. It's a genius machine. You move around the hopper, and it's called what we got the spider, and the spider takes arms that are pivoted, so you're able to move this around, and 2 to 3 people can manage the machine and the material. Here, we were exploring how to sort of stretch the extents of the lavacrete. It's a 2-foot thick, 4-foot tall, 18-foot span of scoria cement beam. We're always looking at these projects in their ruined state. The thing that inspired us about our culture and our landscape here, we're still bringing it, how we draw it, how we think about it, and how we look at these projects. We had a leftover pile of scoria, which we didn't want to haul away, so we found a way to reuse it under the slab for vapor barrier and more insulation. And a sort of image of this nod back to where some of our inspirations come from.
Tim and Marcus are the owners. They asked us to design them a home of distinction and ease. A retreat for 2, a vessel for gatherings, and a quiet observatory for the beauty of the high desert. And they came to us with references to New Mexican Sala, the spatial poetics of Judd and Terrell, and the idea that a house could feel elemental, grounded, and transcendent. As Jesus mentioned, over time, the program evolved. We were actually about to break ground, and they said, we want to build that first. We were literally going to break ground the next day. And we had a turn. We didn't have a permit. We didn't have a design. Jacob and Jesus pulled that out in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and then I don't know how long the permit took. 3 months. So it's a little casita that became man camp where the Scoria crew lived. There was like bunks in what we call the car closet. And the idea was that the owners could use this in the future for turning this place into a compound where friends come. We also developed this area for 2 full RV hookups. So you have big RVs. This place could essentially turn into a 10-bedroom party compound, which that's what they coined it. And then in the house, they wanted spaces that could be flexible between intimacy and celebration. Again, the house is a study in passive performance, radiant heat, fireplaces, no mechanical cooling. Living here means moving and operating the home with the seasons. Formally, I think that sombra is where lava meets sky. The solid form hovers just enough to let light and shadow animate its mass. The result is a structure that doesn't necessarily sit on the land so much as settle into its memory. It's not a house that ages, it's a house that will accumulate time. And the silhouette for us feels familiar, like something ancient, reimagined. From the east, one arrives at the entry through a stand of junipers, and a narrow passage draws you in. The architecture withholds and then reveals. Inside, the darkness is comforting, facilitating meditation. Light, material, proportion create space for pause. The sala is a chamber for presence, one that receives the landscape and light. White oak millwork warms the interior, the touch point drawn from the golden hues of the grasses. Warm wood where you touch, doors, drawers, cabinets. It's a gentle counterpoint to the scoria's depth. The bedrooms are deeply intimate places of respite with the emotive power of light and visual connection to the landscape. And in contrast, the bathrooms are luminous. White clay plaster with vermiculites and handmade tile provide visual softness, a palate cleanser, and a change in the emotional key. The sala flows outward like water. The north frames a quiet view of the Sangre de Cristos and Santa Fe. And the south cantilevers upward towards the heavens, lifting the sala towards the sky. At night, the south glazed wall becomes a theater of stars and the Milky Way the ceiling. To the west, to the west of the sala, a deep 18-foot overhang offers deep shade and invites mystery and creates an outdoor living room complete with fireplace. In the summer, the fireplace mass blocks the heat, and in winter, the space harnesses the setting sun. This is a place of gathering where we find ourselves upon every visit, a place to watch the clouds form, snow fall, listen to the land, the animals, or do nothing at all. The material, the exterior material, it's matte and mute, and it constantly changes with the light. At sunrise, it's violet. By noon, it's umber. And at dusk, nothing but a silhouette. You find it is a chameleon. It disappears when you're not looking, and it remembers light more than its form. The smell of juniper, fire, the cool floor, the rustle of the wind to the grasses. These small elements and rituals define the atmosphere of the home. The materials are few, but each chosen to amplify the landscape, the grasses, the mountains, and the sky. And we've been aiming to describe how we seek to create meaningful architecture that touches the heart, elevates the spirit, and supports a deeper kind of health, one rooted in time, land, and a quiet presence. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time? Or maybe they need to turn them off.
Oh, got it.
There we go. So we have time for questions. Does anybody have any questions for Kate or Jesus?
Thank you. That was just absolutely amazing. To my eye, you've got some of the most beautiful plans that I've seen. And to me, making a great plan is practically a lost art. Would you talk a little while about how you get those? And then if I'm not mistaken, at least two of the houses, everything's orthogonal except there's one wall that has an angle in it. So if that's a feature of some importance, also talk about that. Thank you.
Yeah. How do we get good plans? I don't know if I can answer that. Through rigor, nonstop investigation, not satisfied till it feels right. And I think there's a lot of intuition there. But you keep working it. Yeah, I don't know if Jesus has a better response.
It's better, but Casa Caldera, the 945 square foot, took both Kate and I about a month to land that plan. And after that plan, probably months after that, analyze what that spatial experience and lifestyle would be. And then just the graphics of it is still years back, bringing them up, as you said. There's a
The iteration.
Bring in the hard questions, Ken. No, we're pursuing. The horizon keeps going. So the desert is a chapter, and it's a thing we know, and it's a thing we've been fortunate to have work and respond to, but ready and willing and happy to think about other environments, definitely, and hopefully still get to play in this region.
Hey, Zeus, can you hear me?
Like God, is that John?
Oh my gosh, John Grable. How you doing, bro?
I'm good.
Hey, Kate.
Hey, Juan.
Man, I have more of an observation than a question, because two of my team members are here, and we're having a great time. And I think that, when I think back, it's been over a decade, but I'm trying to encapsulate this for the students, for the audience, and you, that the big observation is you started out with unbridled enthusiasm, and there was great wonder. And I remember the stories about the house down on the border, and how, the best thing about the day was getting the bacon and eggs going, and how cold it was. And I guess fast forwarding, that enthusiasm and the young mind enthusiasm has sort of grown into a really amazing. You guys are little Yodas at this point, and that your patience, enthusiasm, and your propensity for observation and question has revealed so many beautiful things in your work, and things have matured, and you've relied on orthogonal or right angle, and that the placement of the building and how it reveals the place is intoxicating, because it's almost overly simple, but yet I know that there were thousands of steps to get to that point. And so I thoroughly enjoyed that. And one of the things I'm learning from the team is to try to slow down on process and believe in the phases a little more, because I'm trying to slow down a little bit, because I'm seeing that time is revealing more things, and time is of the essence, not only in design, but just in all of the things that we do. And thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Good question. I'll leave it at that. No, I mean, in the early start of it, we thought it was accessible. It's inexpensive. not until Santa Fe did we realize supply chains and the industry streams that make what we build with so affordable. All of our projects are battling against that. You know, fast and cheap doesn't really quantify what we're doing. So the choice of the material and where we're going with it is, part of it is performance. Part of it's aesthetic, and part of it is trying to respond to larger cultural and geological histories. You know, we would still try to pursue that material, and the more of us that pursue it, we open up those chains and industry patterns. And, you know, I think Cade has a comment of, we're not really all building with Adobe till it's on a Home Depot shelf. And that brings a lot of context. There's a lot of depth there, because our kit of parts are the things that industry gives us through leverage, kilowatts, petroleum, and supply chains. So part of it, I like how Cade said it, the earth, what'd you say? The earth is a quiet resistance.
And we have projects. We haven't photographed. Pins is one of them. And we're using other materials as well. And we just haven't had a chance to, you know, some of the ones Jesus was touching on, we haven't had a chance. We also have a frame building under construction right now outside in Porto Valley. So, but often, if a client comes to us and says, I want to earth the material, of course we're going to go there. And we'll have a conversation about versus desired square footage, and really try to get real about, are you willing to reduce your vision in the idea of square foot to get this material? And the guy that built the furniture for the project on the screen, he used to build, I think on Long Island, he's a super talented carpenter as well. He's in Taos now, his name's Simral Achenbach. Amazing work. We went to his house, it's Adobe. Came, I was like, you care too much about the, yeah, that's okay with us. Because I would still go back to the material connects us to place.
And we're looking at a 1,000-year house, if possible, that the ruins of those still are in the landscape. But right in front of you is the genius Paul Schwamm. Paul, you got any thoughts on why did we spend a year hunting black lava? Sorry to put you on the spot, buddy.